Okay, I think we're on. We're connected. Still got a bit over a minute to go before I start. Let's see, we got a few people checking in. The weather's finally nice here. Finally, spring weather. Very late this year. Okay, almost 6. Okay, here we go. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhasa. So we're continuing on with the series on the hindrances and jhana factors. There is a system explained in the Visuddhimagga where each jhana factor is hindered by one specific hindrance. It's a one-to-one correspondence. And I'm dealing with it that way. And today we're up to, and I'm doing it in the order of the jhana factors. And today we're up to Sukha versus Uddhacca Kukkucca. The hindrance of Uddhacca Kukkucca is translated various ways. One of the kind of clever translations that gets put out there is worry and flurry, which replicates the rhyming or the near rhyming of the Pali. Uddhacca and Kukkucca are actually two different mind states, but they are paired here because they're closely related, and they, in the form of a nivarana or a hindrance, you can consider them together. Uddhacca is best understood as restlessness. This is the unsettled quality of the mind, and I'm sure everyone who practices meditation is aware of the feeling of a restless mind when you can't settle. Your brain is spinning around. You're thinking of this and that, or and the body feels can even feel twitchy, unable to sit still. This is restlessness. Kukkucca is agitation, anxiety, worry. Sometimes it's translated as remorse. I think the best general sense is anxiety. It's the mind. It's another form of having an unsettled mind. And basically, you could say it's a mind that's unable to sit in the present moment. And the two common translations of this as remorse on the one hand and anxiety on the other point to mind going into the past or the future. Remorse is when you keep running over scenes in your mind of the past where you did something wrong or you regret something and you feel bad about it. And anxiety is the mind running off into the future, being concerned about what bad things might happen. So there's no, in the present moment, if the mind is in the present moment, there's neither remorse nor anxiety. There's nothing to regret, nothing to worry about. So both of these mind states, Uddhacca and Kukkucca, designate a mind that's unsettled and also unhappy. There's an unhappiness associated with being unsettled, being restless, or worrying. You're not at peace. It's a mind that lacks in peacefulness. And this is precisely the type of mind that prevents or hinders the arising of sukha. Sukha is happiness or bliss, often translated particularly in the context of jhana factors, as bliss, to differentiate it from piti, which is also another form of happiness. Sukha has as a jhana factor, it has the characteristic of being deeper, more peaceful. It's kind of the oceanic happiness, feeling of being completely at ease and content and joyous. In contrast to piti, there's no particular bodily association, except that the body feels completely at ease. There's no sense of stress or tension in the body. Sukha is sometimes used outside of the context of jhana. It's sometimes used simply to mean pleasant mind state, or as in the Abhidhamma, there's sukha is used just to designate pleasant mind state. So it doesn't necessarily have as strong or as deep a sense as it does in terms of a jhana factor. Piti and sukha arise together in first and second jhana, with piti being more evident because it's kind of noisier. Sukha arises without piti in third jhana. And the differentiation between the two, one is illustrated by the difference between the Abhasara Brahmas and the Subhakina Brahmas, that is, the Brahma gods of the second and third level. The Brahma gods of the second level, like all Brahma gods, they're radiant, they glow, and their radiance is said to flicker like a torch. And the radiance of the Subhakina Brahmas of the third level, which is equivalent of third jhana, and their consciousness is marked by predominance of sukha, their radiance is said to glow steadily like the full moon. It's also said to be the happiest or most joyful state of existence in samsara, is as a Subhakina deity. So when we excuse me, when we experience sukha, there is necessarily a complete absence of restlessness and anxiety in the mind. When there is restlessness and anxiety in the mind, then sukha cannot arise. This is the antithetical pair. The word nivarana for hindrance really means wandering down the wrong path, going the wrong way. So the mind wanders off into the thoughts about this and that, and either regrets and remorse about the past, or anxiety about the future, or a general restlessness and discontent. It's not at peace, and it's not grounded in the present moment. these mind states are said to be rooted in the root of delusion. These are not greed or hatred states; they're delusion states. So whenever you feel anxious, if you feel anxiety, then your mind is to some degree deluded, because you're dwelling on something that is unreal. That which is not yet manifest is unreal, and that which has passed away into the past no longer exists, and it's not real in the present moment. So if your mind is focused on those things, then you're in a state of delusion, and inevitably there's suffering associated with that. It also should be said that, as with all of these jhana factors, the jhana factor is the more natural, primordial state of mind, and the hindrances are the kind of lower or artificial state that prevents or hinders the experience of the natural mind. You could say that jhana is really the natural mind when it's not obstructed by hindrances. So when anxiety is made quiescent and restlessness is made quiescent, then a natural blissfulness begins to manifest. It's a natural state of mind that's free of restlessness, free of anxiety. As far as anxiety or remorse go, the first thing, remember that they are, as I said, deluded states, and also they're quite useless states. Nothing is ever solved or resolved by worrying about it. Anxiety is a quite useless waste of mental energy. If something difficult if you perceive that some difficulty is coming your way in the near future, rationally planning how to deal with it is not worry, but running around in circles endlessly playing out different scenarios is anxiety, and it's worthless. It doesn't help. No one's ever benefited from being anxious or worrying about anything. And the same could be said for remorse, the mind that goes into the past. What's done is done. A lesson can be learned from mistakes made, but to endlessly beat yourself up over it and rehearse it in your mind and feel guilty and feel bad because you made a mistake, it doesn't help anything. It doesn't do any good. It doesn't move you along. You know? When your mind is not deluded, when it's clearly seeing what is real, which is what is the present object of consciousness, it's seated in the present moment, and it's not wandering into realms of delusion, then this is a peaceful state of mind. It's not agitated, it's not restless, and it can blossom into happiness and bliss. Likewise, restlessness, the pure consideration of Uddhacca, this is a very common defilement to arise. The first thing to recognize about Uddhacca is that it is so deeply rooted a defilement that it's only overcome by the Arahant. Even an Anagami is subject to some degree of restlessness. But when restlessness arises in meditation, the best advice is not to give in to it. You can never overcome restlessness by appeasing it. People often in meditation, when restlessness arises, they get a false or a false idea in their mind that, oh, my meditation is not going well. Maybe it'll be better if I stop for now and go and do something else, and clean the cabinet or go for a walk or read a book or do something else than meditate. that never works, and the restlessness will return because you've given into it, you've appeased it. The way to overcome restlessness is through stillness. Even though it's difficult, you have to bear through. Physical stillness, sitting still, not allowing yourself to fidget or move about, but also to work on mental stillness, of not letting the mind wander, but remain object. And this can be a struggle if you've allowed restlessness to really take root. But when you get through to the other side of that, then you find this peace and happiness and calm. So we're now up to the fourth jhana factor, which is associated primarily with third jhana. And we're seeing a progression in these mental states from the most coarse to the most subtle in their relative terms. This is a very important thing to understand about developing samadhi, is the mind is always moving from a coarser, grosser state to a more calm, subtle, more sublime state. So vichara is more subtle than vitakka, but both of these states seem coarse relative to the experience of second jhana, which is primarily grounded in piti. And piti begins to seem coarse, and the mind drops it and moves into third jhana, which is marked by sukha. And none of that is possible without rendering the hindrances quiescent. As long as the mind is playing around in any of the hindrances, then samadhi will not deepen and one cannot enter jhana. So I'll stop there and answer questions. Okay, got a first question coming up. How can we distinguish between restlessness as a motivation for discontinuing meditating and simply concluding a session? It seems that any session would imply some degree of restlessness. No, not necessarily. Well, one simple way is to to time your session and determine you're going to do 40 minutes or an hour, and stick to that. Some people use like a stick of incense, so I won't get up from my seat till the incense is burned up. That's one way of doing it. Another is that if you're meditating without timing it, there is a different feeling between just giving up in the middle of the session and feeling that you've come to a culmination point, which will have some relationship to time. Like you have an intention to meditate for about an hour, and your mind goes through a certain kind of cycle and naturally emerges from meditation at close to the time when you wish. That's different than just breaking off in the middle because it's difficult. I know some people say that, and I think there's some truth to it. I've heard some teachers say that the first time that the sense arises to end the meditation, ignore it, and the second time will be the correct one. I think that you can't make that into a hard and fast rule for everybody, but I think there's some truth to that. If somebody has reached fourth jhana, will the entire chatter stop? Yeah, the mental chatter stops in second jhana. It's very quiet in first jhana. Thank you for the Ajahn. Okay, Ajahn, I understand intellectually that remorse is useless, but it still comes up for me frequently. How do I rid myself of the delusion to end the experience of remorse? I think you need to use yoniso manasikara, right reflection, when remorse about the past arises, to reflect that this is no longer real. This is no longer me. This was mind and body at that moment did this thing, but I'm not there now. And this happened long ago, so it's not real now. You can use those kind of reflections, using a reflective mind to pierce through the delusion. Remember that the past is unreal because it has ceased to exist. And there's no continuity of self. So what was done long ago is not me now. Sloth refers to mental state and torpor to physical states. Could you give a clear example of each? Well, that's not quite the definition from that I cited from the in the talk on sloth and torpor. The actual reference is that tina refers to stiffness of the chitta, of the consciousness, and middha to stiffness of the chittasika or mental states. That's not the body. So it's consciousness and mental states. A clear example of each. The sloth or dullness of consciousness would be when the mind is very dull, like when you're extremely sleepy or dozy, and you're not clearly awake or aware. And the torpor of the mental states or the mental body would be when the thinking process is dull and not clear. Like you're having trouble doing, figuring something out or reading a book. You just can't follow it. That's this kind of stiffness of the mental states. Ajahn, I'm having difficulty hearing you. Is the audio bad for everybody? I haven't really changed anything. I don't know why it should be any different than other times. It works fine now. Okay. Ajahn, what's the relationship between doubt and restlessness? Well, doubt is the this is true, maybe that's true. So it implies a certain form of restlessness, but it's kind of a more specific defilement than restlessness. Is kind of a general discontent with just being still. Okay, next one. I have the same question like Bilion, which was about remorse. You suggested reflection. What is the difference between reflection and rational thinking? Well, the difference is with rational thinking, you're not trying to, or with rational thinking, you are trying to figure something out. You're trying to reason something out. But reflection is what I mean by that, and I will use the Pali Yoniso Manasikara, right reflection, is applying Dhamma principles to a situation. So this is very directed, and you're not really trying to figure it out, trying to rationalize it and analyze it. You're just looking at it and saying, "Oh, this is not real. This is not me. This is not mine. I don't need to take ownership of this. I don't need to let this bother me." Next one. I noticed something similar in my practice in that halfway through my meditation, I get worried that my timer somehow isn't set correctly and I will be sitting for longer than I intend to. Yeah, that sounds like kind of attachment and a needless anxiety. Just if you're working with a timer, just make sure you set the timer correctly at the outset. And if you end up sitting longer, that's not going to do you any harm. So don't worry about it. Next one. Does the ending of restlessness, remorse signify escape from Mara's influence? Yeah, in general, I could say that. In some suttas, the Buddha asked meditators whether they are still influenced by worry and regret before they die. If they're not worried or remorseful, Mara can't find their consciousness when it leaves the body. Yeah, if a person is completely purified, if they're an arahant, then they have no worries or regrets. Then Mara can't have a way of knowing where they went. There's one sutta where somebody dies as an arahant, and the monks see this kind of smoky cloud moving around. And the Buddha says that's Mara searching for his consciousness and cannot find it. Basically, when you're close to death, you should try and develop skillful mind states. And if you've done something wrong in your lifetime and you're obsessing at it on your deathbed, then it's going to magnify the karma from that deed for your next birth. You should focus on the skillful things that you've done. Would it be true to say that non-attention to any hindrance that arises until it passes is a practice method for dealing with them? Yeah. For developing samatha meditation, one of the real skills to learn is the skill of non-attention, which actually makes this practice difficult for people who start with vipassana. I found that which actually was my case. When I started meditating, I learned vipassana first and did that for actually a few years before I tried doing samatha. And it's an entirely different skill. The skill of attention in vipassana is replaced by the skill of non-attention. If you don't pay attention to mind states, by remaining focused on your object of meditation, then you're not feeding energy into that state, it'll fade away. It doesn't mean, but it's a subtle difference, because it doesn't mean tolerating them or ignoring them. You're not allowing them any space in the mind by disregarding them, but but there's a subtle difference between that and kind of letting them go, letting them be, and then having one of the defilements continue on without without stopping. If that's disturbing your mind a lot, it might be best to abstain for periods of time from getting into any online interaction. Just turn it off. Ajahn, I have a question unrelated to today's topic. I heard your talk where you talked about the tsunami and the scores of people dying due to that being their karma. Does the same apply to the kid shot in Uvalde, Texas a few days ago? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that place properly. If so, doesn't that exonerate the shooter from the karma of having killed the kids? No, it doesn't. This is very important. It would they would if those people were shot. That was their karma. They had somehow made that karma in the past, but that does not exonerate the shooter. He's making evil karma for the future. As both sides are playing out, but the victims are experiencing result of karma, and the shooter is making new karma. The kids would have died anyway, given their past karma. Maybe not in this lifetime. Maybe conceivably not ever. Maybe they might have reached arahantship before that karma reaches fruition. You see, there has to be, for karma to reach fruition, there has to be external situation that allows that karma to manifest. Karma is not the sole cause of everything. It's one cause, but there are other causes contributing and interacting. Does Sukha arise out of stillness? When it does arise, do we need to work with that pleasure, like sending it to tension in the body, or does one sort of let it flow naturally? I would say it's better to let it flow naturally, not to try and play with it or manipulate it. Just let it be. And it does come out of stillness. Samadhi is stillness. When the mind is still and it's not agitated, then it naturally becomes happier. You're not suppressing your happiness with agitation. The definition of samadhi as stillness is not mine. It's the Abhidhamma's. If I were to come to Ontario, would it be possible to come visit you and maybe help with work around the Hermitage? Send an email to our center, and we can talk about it. Currently, we have no room for this month and the next. Some suttas say that practicing inward peacefulness is best against Uddhacca and Kukkucca. Is that a specific practice? Well, that would be not really a specific practice, but it's the fruit of practice. If you do any samatha meditation, you're developing inner peacefulness. And anapanasati is particularly recommended as a, that's mindfulness of breathing, is particularly recommended for overcoming restlessness and anxiety, because the breath is inherently peaceful. Ajahn, following the off-topic discussion on karma, what if the victim's karma was physical, like some the Buddha had, which bore fruition even after arahantship? Yes, yeah, the Buddha did experience old karma even after he attained Buddhahood in terms of some physical suffering, but it's always attenuated in such a case. There's the story of Angulimala, who was a bandit, and we would call him in modern terms a serial killer. He murdered 99 people, and the Buddha converted him. He practiced and became an arahant, became a monk and an arahant. And one time he was on alms round in the village, and some village boys abused him, called him names, and threw stones at him. And one of them hit him in the head and cut his forehead. And he reported that to the Buddha, and the Buddha's comment was, "Bear it, Angulimala, bear it. That's the whole of your karma for having killed 99 people. If you had not become an arahant, you would have spent 99 kappas in hell." So again, regarding reflection versus rational thinking, does Uniso Manasakara then apply a kind of understanding beyond thinking? Yeah, that's not a bad definition. You could say that. It's like applying, but I would add the extra clause. It's like applying that understanding to a specific situation. Like you understand there is no self. You understand that things are insubstantial, and when something arises in the mind causing you trouble, you apply that knowledge to the factor and see through it. Are sadness and fear forms of aversion? Yes, yeah, they're defilements rooted in aversion. Does arahantship have a mitigating effect on previous bad karma? Yes. So at the time of their death, any karmas that have not come to fruition are just done. They don't arise again. This series, and next week will be ikagata, the jhana factor of ikagata, or the unity of mind, contrasted with the defilement of kamavachara, sense desire. And that will conclude this series. Okay, thank you, and see you again next week.